Hi, I'm Dr. David Dobson. Welcome to Conversations. Today, my guest is Dr. Antonios Tiganis. Antonios recently completed his PhD at Aarhus University. Today, we will discuss his research, which focuses on the role of political ideology in sustainable consumer behavior. Antonios, it's a great pleasure to have you here.
Hi, David. It is great that you asked me to join your podcast. I really like some of the previous interviews I saw online. So I'm looking forward to have an interesting discussion.
Antonios, in your dissertation, you quoted Aristotle as saying that humans are by nature political animals.
Yeah.
How has this ancient philosophy shaped our modern understanding of why we choose one brand over another based on our political leanings?
Uh, okay. Look, in ancient Greece, there was an politics where actually meaning the active participation of people. So because it was comes from the word polis, which is the city. So you are actually a citizen only if you participated in politics, at least in the democratic and not oligarchic part of Greece. So I wouldn't say that the ancient Greek democracy is literally translated today in our modern republics, but a big part of these ideas still insist. If we think about this conceptualization of politics, I would say that not everyone is characterized by that. It's mostly the people who are more involved and they want to be actively participating. So it would reflect mostly to people with democratic values or direct democratic values.
Antonio, you grew up in Greece,
Yeah.
and you spent years as an organic farmer and beekeeper before entering academia. So, how has your upbringing in Greece and your agriculture and farming background led you to PhD research into the friction between conservative ideology and environmental sustainability?
Well, I don't know if it would be Greece that led me to that. Maybe one part. It could be the economic crisis that
Mm,
had made more edgy all politics, and people were very interested into politics because they could see directly the impact of politics in their lives.
mm.
Of course, politics affect everybody's life everywhere. It's not
Yeah.
just when you have a crisis. But let's say it was more obvious. But to be honest, I think it was also a personal predisposition for these topics. I was reading about political philosophy even before the crisis or before going to university. And then, when after being a farmer and working as in some part-time jobs as agronomist, I already had a more technical understanding of sustainability. And then I wanted to bring in also the political ideology theory perspective. So to do something that fits my interest mostly.
Okay, very good. Um, Antonio, your research suggests that while many brands are going green, uh, they often face unexpected resistance. Why do you think the role of political ideology in sustainable consumption is important in marketing, yet it's largely ignored in the marketing world?
Look, the last years, to be honest, there is an marketing literature works a lot with political ideology. Of
Mm,
course, it's not the main topic, but
mm,
still there is a lot of research ongoing.
mm,
It's because there was the discussion about climate change has been became very divisive and very polarizing, especially in the US, where a big part of mainstream political party, a part of the Republican Party, was very vocal against the anthropogenic causes of climate change, would lead to people rejecting the fact of the climate change per se. And we can even see some public intellectuals and scholars, even though they're university professors, denouncing the climate, which like what? I mean, it's like the relevant literature, unanimous, almost by consensus, attributes the climate change to anthropogenic causes. So because of this political discourse, of this polarizing political discourse, many people, if they see a brand that has a green message, or even a social sustainability message beyond the environmental sustainability, they would associate this message with maybe a left-wing political perspective. So it might cause a backlash to that. So that's why a part of the ongoing research is about how to change that, or how to reframe the sustainability issue, both in environmental and in social aspects, to reframe it as something that would someone who is conservative but would also identify with that, and these mental blocks that have been created in their mind about sustainability, we can surpass them.
Very interesting. Antonio, for your dissertation, you have 4 papers. In your first paper, you found that conservative consumers in Greece value naturalness and tradition over environmental impact. So, how can sustainable food brands speak the language of tradition to reach these audiences without relying solely on the green labels?
What in as far as I understand, sustainability is not only about the label. It's a product might be more sustainable than others, even though it's not labeled as such. So, for example, if you calculate the CO2 emissions of a specific product A and the CO2 emissions of product B, and you can persuade consumers to use product B, then maybe they make green choices, no matter the label and no matter the framing. For example, in Canada, in North Europe, in Greece, you can go to have a fast food, right? Yes. And many fast food have inside beef or pork or chicken, but there are also the Arabic fast food that has falafel. So, for example, falafel, because it's a bean, it's made from beans, it has far lower CO2 emissions compared to beef. So, for example, instead of saying that of having this brand label as alternative meat or plant-based, which is like doesn't sound sexy, or something that is, I mean, you have some beers and then you eat something that is plant-based. Sometimes it does not really fit the narrative of going out having fun. But if you say, look, we are eating a very cool traditional dish from a very old and interesting culture, then it changes. I grew up in Greece, and my parents were both very healthy oriented, and we were eating meat very, very rarely. But why? Not because it was about sustainability. No one told, now you're eating a vegetarian dish. It was like, now you're eating a traditional Greek dish. You're eating lentils or beans or something like this, and you take the proteins from cheese, from feta. So it is a greener choice, but you don't have to say do it for the environment. You can say do it for the tradition, or this is the traditional way, or something like this. So you can play with that also for social sustainability. For example, when I was studying in Thessaloniki, we did with my colleagues and my professors a study about women cooperatives. So many rural women have some cooperatives that they create some traditional small pastries, some sweets, some liqueur from fruits, which is very nice. And you can find it in the mountains. Sometimes you can find it in rural cities. And this, you can buy them. You can support the local food systems that I'm not sure if they are indeed more green, but at least they are perceived more green. But definitely you support the local societies. So you can find the right product to position with this type of values.
In your second paper, you distinguishes between social order and social justice as drivers for CSR, corporate social responsibility preferences. Yes. Can you explain why a conservative consumer might support a company's commitment to its shareholders and suppliers, but feel alienated by its social justice initiatives?
Uh, Look, this distinction is based on the differences between morality of conservatives and I would say in US it's liberals, but if we take a bigger view, I mean, in Europe, liberals are not considered left wing; they are considered right wing. It's the socialists are left wing. So, but I think that this morality distinction still applies. So it's that right wing people or conservative people want to keep the society as it is, keep the social order, because they are afraid that changes can harm the cohesion of society. While liberals or left wings in Europe would be more interested about preserving the fairness inside the community. So, so from this perspective, if you are conservative, you would think that the responsibility of a company to keep the society standing would pass through protecting the shareholder, the supplier. So let's say the economic structure of the society. While for liberal individuals or left wing, I guess it would be something similar in Europe, even though we didn't test that. It would be that they would focus more on the employees, on social issues, maybe in the environment, even though it's not directly related to social justice, the environment, but still there might be some correlation with other moral predictors of environmental care.
Your research primarily focus on the messaging of so on your third paper, you found that prevention-oriented language, focusing on safety and avoiding harm, boosts engagement among conservative audiences.
Yes.
Can you give an example of how pro-environment message could be reframed as a promotion focus to a prevention focus?
Yes. Look, this type of theory, let's say, of this line of research has some assumptions. For example, one assumption is that the way you say something, it brings different outcomes. Based on that, there is a theory from psychology which speak about how humans regulate themselves. So some people are regulating themselves mostly to prevent a negative outcome, and while some others mostly to promote a positive outcome. And previous research has shown that liberals are more have a regulatory state, a regulatory focus on promoting something good, while conservatives in preventing something bad. That's why they are conservatives. They want to conserve things. So afraid that if we change something, things could deteriorate, fall down, fall apart. So based on that, previous research said that we should target we should target the conservatives with prevention-framed messages. So, for example, let's say I will take the example of social sustainability because this is a topic that the effects are stronger. Let's say a company or a brand wants to make a post about some good things they did in the local society. That, for example, they supported an orphanage. So they should say, we prevent harm to the kids or to vulnerable kids in an area that it has stronger conservative population. But for example, if they make the same post or the same advertisement in New York or in a big city with stronger liberal population, they would say we promote the well-being or we accomplish something. While in the conservative, we would say we prevented, we stopped from something, we protected the kids from something.
Yeah,
that could be one way to show that.
Yeah. Antonio, your third paper, which kind of compares between the economic conservatism and the social conservatism. One of your key contribution is the need to differentiate between ideological subtypes.
Yes.
So why is an economic conservative less likely to engage with sustainable content than a social conservative?
The why is that the research we have done shows that they engage less and they are more reactant towards the message. I think it's because which is something interesting, because in the past people thought of conservatives as something that is unidimensional. But for example, after my PhD was published, we did we completed with other studies, so we can because we are under review. This paper is under review, and the reviewers asked us for more evidence. And consistently, we see that social conservatives are not against sustainability. It's the economic conservatives, because in the economic conservatives, they put the importance of the individual choice in the forefront. So it's like, if you have a problem, it's up to you. It's your problem. So they don't like this type of messages. They react harder to that. They have more psychological reactance. They disagree with these messages. While for social conservatives, they don't disagree with that. Of course, maybe if, for example, it might depend on the type of social sustainability. For example, we tested messages supporting employees or supporting communities. If we tested messages supporting LGBTQ initiatives or having the Pride Month, maybe also we would see a more unidimensional response of conservatives to this cause. So, it's a little bit blur the line. What we say is sustainability, what we say is brand activism, what we say it's CSR, because they overlap in some parts. So it can also be very strongly dependent on the topic.
So what does this mean for marketers, and let's say for digital marketers?
It depends, I would say, for example, it depends on if they want to create, it depends on the type of brand. If it's a big brand that appeals to everyone, right? It might have to do with, it might help them to have some geographic differentiation regarding on the posts they make on Facebook, or who they can see the post. They can have different posts for different states or even different countries. I guess states it would be more easy, but it's like big cities usually have more liberal population. Rural areas might have more social conservative. Now, I don't speak with evidence, but from experience, I think that economic conservatives might be more close to the cities and social conservatives more close to rural areas. So if this is the case, they can differentiate, and also depending on the country, of course, by geographics. If it's a small brand with a niche market, with a niche market base, then they should try to understand the profiling of their customers, if they have any type of political leanings. For example, there are some brands that are supported a lot by left-leaning people, and some brands that are supported a lot by right-leaning people. So it also depends there what type of right-leaning people support you, right? So it's this could help the brand identify with the moral and the ideological background of their customer base, and position and promote their products easier.
Right. Focusing on your valence framing, negative framing, and positive framing, and I think on your paper 4, where you discuss the negative framing is for liberals. So your research shows that the liberal audience respond more to negative or loss framed message than the positively framed messages. What does this tell us about the progressive mindset regarding environmental urgency?
The progressive, I would say that it's easier to answer for the conservative, because we find this both from field data and from experiment. So I would say that what I understand about conservatives is that they are not that loss averse when it comes to environment, because the theory on political ideology and political psychology was suggesting that in general conservatives are more loss averse. There is a debate on that among psychologists. I mean, there is let's say, not recent, I mean, a paper in 2020 that found that it cannot conclude whether conservatives are more loss averse. But the interesting thing in our research is that by putting by highlighting the environmental context, liberals become loss averse. So it's if you see it from a liberal perspective, it's interesting because you can see that they are loss averse in some context, while the conservatives that were considered to be more loss averse in general, and they are more loss averse in societal aspects. That's why they tend towards social order. In the environment, they are not loss averse. It's exactly the opposite. So I think that this is cool to know that this loss aversion changes according to the specific thing we have to make a decision.
Right. And Antonio, you also study social media posts, which involve analyzing thousands of real Instagram and Facebook posts. What was the most surprising thing you learned about how likes and shares differ between liberal-leaning and conservative-leaning brand communities?
I don't think that I had a very big surprise on that.
Okay.
I mean, I would say that maybe what we discussed in the previous topic, it was the interesting thing that there are some contexts that negative language can be more engaging for liberals. But for this specific study, at first we were planning to publish it as two field studies, and then we said, "What this thing might be from the noise of social media. This might not be true." So we did an experiment to replicate it to see if this is indeed what's happening. And I think this is what surprised me.
Nice. So in terms of the policy advice, if you were advising a government policymaker trying to encourage sustainable eating habits, what is the most important change they should make to their communication strategy based on your findings?
You know, for eating habits in general, if we see eating behavior in general, I would be very, very, very reluctant to suggest anything because I believe it's very, very, very difficult to change eating habits. I mean, if it was easy, Ozempic wouldn't be such a big success, right? So it's like it's the Ozempic, it's the green consumption. It's very, very hard. So it's so the only thing that I could say from my research is that if the problem is in political ideology, if there is a political, if an ideological opposition, then we should work on reframing the whole thing, because it's and in some aspects of green eating, I believe it is. I believe it is. There are, there are ideological or values or lifestyle problems. So, for example, it's sometimes it's also associated with with culture, that you go out, you eat meat in a barbecue, and you drink. So, I mean, isn't it eating meat, for example, is a problem for the environment? But drinking is also a problem. Excessive drinking, it's also a problem for the individual. So we cannot. It's hard to convince people not to drink or not to smoke. What about making green choices, right? So in general, it's a very complicated, it's a very difficult issue to address. But for boosting, let's say, such things, I would believe in the communication frames, how we present its new brand, its new product, its alternative. And I would really, really focus on tradition. I mean, I come from Greece. I studied in Aristotle University. Now I live in Denmark. But if I'm not wrong, when I left Greece, they started working in a project about in the School of Agriculture, in the Department of Agricultural Economics in Thessaloniki. They do something about underutilized crops, which is something very interesting. So, for example, you have a local variety of, of wheat, or for something that is in the region of beans. And then you use the indigenous variable, the indigenous product that might require less inputs. But then it might be more expensive because, instead of producing 1 ton, you will produce, 8, maybe 100 kilos. So then you have to explain why the people will pay more. And especially to Greece, that has been struck by the financial crisis, and we didn't really recover after that. Yeah, it would be tough because also, people make decisions not only for ethical reasons. I mean, they make primarily decisions on survival issues, right? And this is in most parts of the world. So how you can say to someone, be more green while they have to be on a budget, right?
Yeah.
So another thing would be it's not only about convincing the consumers. Maybe in Denmark, maybe in Canada, that in general is some of the best places to live. Maybe there is still a part of the middle class that can make such decisions. But I mean, if we look at the world, my God, it's and the current geopolitical climate.
Yeah. Um, I was going over your dissertation, and in your acknowledgement, you wrote down that you weren't too grumpy during your PhD research.
Uh,
Not a
uh,
grumpy researcher.
yes. Look, it's grumpiness. It's part of the journey. It can be, for example, I was really blessed to have an amazing supervisor and a true mentor and very good collaborator. But still, it's like, how to say, it's still growing. Like you are a kid and you grow up. So at first, in the first year or years of the dissertation, you listen to whatever your advisor says. But then you do some of the things and some of the things don't work. You have some other ideas. You want to test this, but your advisor says you better do this. Most probably he's right. He was right. But it's like you are you want to become an adult, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
To do your own things, to
Yeah.
have your own suggestions.
Yeah.
It's so I after finishing the process, I think it's very close, like a child path to becoming adult, but you pass through the teenager side. You think you know more things than you actually do, and you try to test them, which is actually good. And if you have a good guidance,
Yeah.
it's smooth and fine. And of course, if you have, it's very important to have good social circle, including family, friends, colleagues. All this play an important role. I mean, I live in Denmark. I live here with my wife. We're together since our master, and we are sharing the journey. So it's like it's something that sustains you through the way. It's like it's important. Then I made friends in the PhD. We discussed our problems. I started my PhD in USA, which is a very tough place to do a PhD. It's the first 2 years I was in the School of Agricultural Economics. We have to study microeconomics, macroeconomics, which is very tough, very mentally exhausting. But I came very close to some people. That we spent the nights together in the library, and this thing is like, I don't know. I have been, all Greeks are required to go to the army, so they are. So in the army, you make some close relationships because you all pass through the same bad things, the same not bad difficulties, and then PhD is almost the same. So it is grumpy, but also because of the grumpiness, you really appreciate the people that are next to you. So you say, yes, you know something? This person, even now, for example, after 4 years, you are not that close. You know that this person, when I was feeling bad, this person was next to me. So this thing goes on as a very sweet memory.
I want to ask you, what was the most challenging part of trying to map the complex human psychic onto consumer data?
Because I didn't really innovate on that part, I used already existing scales. That was not a difficult part. The difficult part I found, and I still find, is about mapping political ideology in Europe. Because in US it's easier, it's more bipolar, or at least it used to be. Here, of course, we have the left wing and the right wing people, which it is a type of bipolar identity. But regarding beliefs-based ideology, it's more complex. So here we have the extreme right wing, which is the nationalists or the fascists. We have the center right or the center left, but we also have the Marxist left, which is it would be, we can still use it in a continuum, but still like it's not really the same thing because, for example, someone who belongs in the Marxist left might be very, very, very collectivist in some aspects. And then you have a right-wing person who is also very, very collectivist, but from another aspect. And then you have someone who is left-wing, but let's say socially left-wing. So they are socially more like for the accept diversity. They are not against immigrants. They are not against LGBT or abortion. But then in economic issues, maybe they have other beliefs. So I think it's a little bit more difficult in Europe, and I still struggle with that. It's I don't have an answer yet, and it's mapped more hard.
Yeah. Antonio, you suggest that future research should move toward looking at ideological um, communities.
Mhm.
How do you think group identity or echo chambers will complicate the future of sustainable marketing?
Yeah, good question. I think that this problem will impact all aspects of both marketing and social life. Um, yeah, I mean, in the past there were also echo chambers. The digital media might, I think, they multiply this effect. So if I see it from a psychological perspective, then the motivated what psychologists call as motivated reasoning. So I have a pre-registered belief in my mind, and then I will judge the new information based on the prior beliefs I have, and then so I tend to be, let's say, less rational. So maybe this will become even higher. So, for example, I don't know. I mean, because our topic is political, even though and marketing is not political per se, but still the topic of discussion is political. I'm shocked to see some of the discussion going on in US regarding the Epstein files, and I'm shocked that some people find excuses for the current administration. And I mean, I'm like, my God. I mean, everyone who has the bad luck to see the photos that have been released knows that whoever is involved is not well, is a bad person. I mean, regardless of political belief, being as conservative as you like. So yeah.
Mm, yeah, yeah.
So by these echo chambers, then maybe people will judge everything on based on what their group says online, and this might I don't know. This might be it might be, but that might be funny. It might be then more penalizing for big brands to be more activist, but maybe for small brands with more niche audience that sometimes will be political, that might be beneficial. So, for example, you have a small brand that is okay, it has a nice product, but position itself as pro-environmental. Maybe your group is small, but it's fine for you. So the people will be more and more loyal because of that. So but maybe for big brands who have less incentives to take a firm stance on some issues. So, for example, I have, and maybe this is why 1 year ago, I think, Mark Zuckerberg was speaking in Joe Rogan podcast against equality and against diversity. So it's like while in the past he didn't have these positions. So it's like I think this is a positioning position. It's a way to not be divisive and keep his mainstream position in the market. So this is not. So this might not be good because some of the strong market players' opinions and advocacy can really influence a lot of people. Can normalize some things that should be normalized.
Yeah. Antonio, I want to talk about the gap you identify, like for the future
Mhm.
research purposes. So, for scholars inspired by your work, where do you see the biggest untapped research opportunities?
I would say in differentiating, not using a unidimensional approach to political ideology. I think this is what I would have done if I went back. This is what I'm doing now. I think it's interesting. I would also look maybe at populism, which is a rising phenomenon. And this is, I mean, it's as if we live, these political ideology scales have been developed recently. And when I say recently, I mean the last 50 years. So the last 50 years are the years after the war. There was a Cold War, but still, at least the Western societies, also Eastern Europe, had stability. They were stable. There was a specific political discourse. Now there are some parts of the right wing that actually they seem like the fascist movement of the 30s. So it's like it's not really conservative. They are actually want to do new things. I mean, to save society, to lead society to a new direction. And I mean, if we go back in history, the fascist movement in Italy, artistically, it was very futuristic. So it's not that so they had all this type of reference in the Roman past, this legion-like language, but still, it's like they were modernist in many aspects. That's why they were revolutionaries. They wanted to tear down the previous establishment. So yeah, this is something that we have to catch up with. I mean, to be honest, I think it's more important for political scientists to do this, so they can tell us what to do about this threat, because it is a threat. And I really hope that marketing will not try to capitalize on that. That would be very responsible. And I mean, supposedly marketing is there to serve brands, to serve fairs, but also there is a social aspect. And yeah, but I hope it will not be like a wishful thinking or something.
Antonio, now that you have defended your dissertation, what is next for you?
Yeah, I'm working in a project about environmental food labels. I'm still in Aarhus University, but I moved to the Department of Food Science. And we're working a very, very interesting project about developing a new label that would be easier to communicate to consumers which product is more and less environmentally friendly based on a more holistic approach in what is environmentally friendly. So, for example, the organic label, which is a very nice label, it's like it's yes or no. It's either you have it or not. But maybe we are going towards developing something that it could give a ranking, a range, and so you can also be able to compare between products. So it's I'm currently working for that, and it's I think that if we manage to do something that it will be adopted, then this can also lead to behavioral change, like in a nudging level. I mean, you see something that is bad, right? So same for nutrition. When you have these traffic lights, you see, even if you love chocolate, you say, I love chocolate, or like I love this chocolate cornflakes and these things. But when I see the D, I'm like, yeah, I like it. Maybe I shouldn't eat that. So I think that people in general have a tendency to make the right decision. So if you have it there and they can see what is better, it will help them make the right choice.
Wonderful. Antonio, thank you so much for sharing your interesting research. We wish you the very best in your future
Thank
endeavors.
You so much, David. Thank you so much.